Okay. So the title of the talk corresponds with this book, Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions. And the book and the talk have a common purpose, and that is to bring the different Buddhist traditions together so that people can see the similarities between them and act with a common purpose in the world as a force for good. Of course, there's differences amongst the Buddhist traditions. Those are documented in the book as well. But if you understand the common points and you understand how the different Buddhist traditions evolved, then you'll see that even though there may be differing doctrinal points here and there, they all are not contradicting one another. And they all take us towards nirvana, towards awakening. So this book, I had the privilege of co-authoring with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And His Holiness's purpose was what I said. He wanted people in the different Buddhist traditions to learn more about other traditions so that we would form one community and act together. Because if we look historically, Buddhism started out 5 or 6 centuries BC, and it was an oral tradition, and it went to many, many different countries. And these countries differed in location, in climate, in governmental structure, in economic structure, in language, in culture, in what the previous religion in that place had been. So Buddhism spread to a wide number of different areas. And as it did so, the people in those areas drew out certain points that they emphasized because those were the points that really resonated with the people in those communities. In addition, different things got modified due to external conditions. So sometimes, if we're not aware of how the Dharma always exists within culture, within human beings, what we do together, then if we don't understand this, then we might get very black and white and say, oh, well, these different traditions are very different, and of course my tradition is the best one, because I always have the best thing of everything, okay? I would not have the second best. Would any of you have the second best? Oh, we all, So if it's my tradition, it's the best one. It's the right one. And that idea creates a lot of sectarianism, a lot of bad feelings, a lot of impediment to the Buddhist community really acting together. Yeah? So in situations, for example, when the Taliban blew up the statues in Afghanistan, or when we have the situation with the Rohingyas going on, or even when we have other, climate change, for example, something that all of us are going to be affected by. And Buddhism has, because we believe in dependent arising, Buddhism can speak very strongly for counteracting climate change, So in order to deal with these present-day problems, we need to really come together And to do that, we have to let go of the wrong conceptions that our various traditions had of each other. Yeah? Because these wrong conceptions grew about because people lived so far away. There were no planes. There was no modern transportation. So they heard some kind of rumor about what goes on in another tradition, and then they thought, oh, now I know everything about that tradition. So, for example, I have to laugh about this, because when I first came to Singapore in 87 and 88, Singapore really has so many different Buddhist traditions. It's quite wonderful. And I had never lived in this kind of situation before, so I really enjoyed meeting more people from other traditions, and the Sangha especially. Anyway, one day I was walking in the park, and one man stopped me, and he said, "What's my lucky number?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "But you practice Tibetan Buddhism, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "But then you should know all about magic, and you should be able to tell me my lucky number." And I said, "Sorry, I don't know anything about magic." Yeah, Tibetan Buddhism is not about magic. Yeah. It's a path to awakening. It's not about magic. Okay? So, it's this kind of wrong idea that people get. So all the different traditions have wrong ideas about the other traditions. Okay? So the Theravada people say about the Mahayana people, "You people aren't really Buddhist. Your scriptures are bogus. We have the only correct scriptures." Well, that's not exactly accurate. Okay? There's different traditions. Sutras became available at different times. There was consolidation in Sri Lanka of one of the 18 original schools. But having 18 original schools, they weren't all in Sri Lanka. They were distributed throughout northern and central India, and they too stemmed from the Buddha's teachings, and they taught Vinaya and Sutra and Abhidharma. Okay? So that kind of idea is incorrect. Yeah. But then the Mahayana look back at the Theravada and say, "Well, you say our scriptures are false and bogus. Well, you people are selfish." And say, "Oh, that's because you only want to be arhats. You don't want to be Buddhas. We have more compassion." Yeah. So this kind of thing also it's not exactly accurate, And you find in the Theravada teachings, the four immeasurables. And among them, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. These teachings are also found in the Tibetan tradition. Okay? And then, of course, both the general Mahayana and the Theravada, they look at the people in Tibet and say, "You people just drink and have sex." You're about as far away from Buddhism as we can get. I've been in the Tibetan tradition since 1975, okay? And I can attest from my personal experience, this is not what Tibetan Buddhism is about, okay? I have never seen orgies where people are drinking and having sex. Maybe if you go to certain areas along Gelong, not the Buddhist temples, but other places, you might find that. but certainly not in Tibetan centers. Yeah. So, this is the reason why we really need to learn about each other's traditions, because otherwise these wrong views just get propagated, and and it's very harmful. Those of you who are parents, would you want your children to fight amongst each other and criticize each other? I don't think any parents want that to happen among their children. Would the Buddha like us as his followers to criticize each other and quarrel? Certainly not. Yeah. And so in the Tibetan tradition, they say, don't criticize any other Buddhist tradition, because that's like criticizing the Buddha. Because all of the traditions originated in one way with one teacher, the same teacher, yeah? And that teacher is the Buddha. And we know that as the Buddha went and spoke throughout ancient India, sometimes he taught slightly different things to different people, because the people in different areas had different mentalities. Yeah. And so that is the indication of what a skillful teacher the Buddha is. Yeah, that he was able to present different viewpoints on certain topics. But the end goal was to gradually lead people to awakening. Okay? But if people have different mentalities, you teach them according to their mentality, yeah? And you gradually get them to go forward. So, we have in Buddhism, you could call it almost a smorgasbord of teachings, a widespread. All of them are food. All of them nourish us spiritually. So you might have, a huge buffet with different food, but they're all for the purpose of sustaining the body. We have the array of Buddha's teachings, but they're all for the purpose of nourishing our hearts and minds and helping us progress towards awakening. So in a regular buffet, some people may like rice, and some people may like noodles, and some people like spicy food, and some people, like me, prefer it not so spicy. Okay. Does that mean that anybody is wrong or anybody is bad? Yeah, just because different people prefer different food, that doesn't mean anybody's wrong, anybody's bad. It just means people have different likes and dislikes. People have different digestive systems. My system doesn't work well with rice and beans. Yeah? And if you live in India, yeah, that's often what you get. Okay? So in a similar way, the teachings the Buddha gave are adapted to the needs and the dispositions of different people, yeah? But they all nourish the people who practice them. Yeah, that's the bottom line. And when we understand that, then we respect all of the traditions. We don't criticize any of them, yeah, because there's many traditions but one teacher, and they all together form what we call Buddhism. Mm-hmm. One thing that I really like in the U.S. is every year the monastics get together. The monastics from, they may be Asian or Caucasian or black or whatever race, but they all teach in English. And so we get together once a year for 5 days, and we don't have a conference, we don't have papers, we don't pass bills, we become friends. And it's really wonderful because that way we learn about each other's traditions, and it develops a lot of mutual respect and harmony, amongst us. And so I saw, slowly the different Buddhist schools in the West are coming together to act more in harmony. So, for example, this last year, many of us signed a general letter to the Buddhist community, really encouraging people to vote. Yeah, because the midterm elections in the U.S. this year were very important, and we want to encourage people to be good citizens and vote. So we signed a letter together. It got sent out to everybody. It was very nice. Yeah. Now, amongst them, I know of one Buddhist tradition where their monastics don't vote. Okay? And that's their choice. That's fine. They have their reasons. Yeah? But the rest of us feel it's very important to vote, and so we can act on that. Okay? So these kinds of things I think are quite important and very helpful. So most books, when they talk about different Buddhist traditions, they deal with it very superficially. And they'll say things, well, all Buddhists bow, all Buddhists make offerings to the Buddha, all Buddhists have altars, things like this that everybody can see. But this book talks about the doctrine, what people believe, what people practice, actually. Now, you might wonder, well, it's authored by the Dalai Lama and me, and we are both practiced in the Tibetan tradition, so how come we're writing a book that includes teachings about the Theravada and general Mahayana tradition? Like, who are you to write that book? Yeah? So, when His Holiness suggested that we do that, he asked me to go to Thailand, and I already was friends with some monks from the Theravada tradition and nuns from the tradition. So I went. I spent a couple of weeks at a Thai monastery. Yeah, it was wonderful, and it was an interesting situation because at that time they didn't have bhikshunis in Theravada Buddhism. Now there's some bhikshunis, some women getting ordained as bhikshunis. But at that time, bhikshunis were unknown. So they couldn't put me with the lay people, because I wasn't a lay person. And they couldn't put me with the bhikshus, because I was a woman, and also because they didn't know what to do with me, because I was a bhikshuni. Yeah. So they put me kind of right between the two. Yeah. And that was fine with me. I didn't care at all where they put me. Okay? But I requested teachings from the master there, and he kindly taught over the days. One of the monks translated, and then I wound up transcribing and editing all those teachings. Yeah, and then I also listened to Bhikkhu Bodhi's teachings on the Majjhima Nikaya. If you haven't listened to those, I highly recommend them. Yeah, he's a wonderful teacher, very learned, and a good practitioner. And I haven't told him this, so be quiet, but I think he's a hidden bodhisattva. Okay. Because when I was working on the book and writing about the Pali tradition, after I listened to his 100-and-something talks explaining the Pali tradition, he was so generous with his time and answered. I would send lists of questions, and he would answer my questions very generous, very helpful. Anyway, I would, his things, his talks they have a DVD on them. I think they're on the web also. But he's a really wonderful teacher, so I recommend that for those of you who follow the Theravada tradition. Then I already had a connection with the Mahayana, the general Mahayana tradition, which, by the way, Tibetan Buddhism is a branch of Mahayana. It's not a different tradition. And Vajrayana is not a different tradition. It's a branch of Mahayana, okay? But I had already gone to Taiwan many years ago to receive my bhikshuni ordination because they don't have that lineage in the Tibetan community. And I had become friends with a lot of Chinese bhikshunis. And so now we have a very close relationship with them. In fact, at the Abbey in February, we had a Vinaya course for Tibetan nuns, but it was taught by a Chinese bhikshuni master. Yeah? And there were Theravada nuns who also attended the course, as well as the Tibetan nuns and the Chinese nuns. So it was really wonderful, people coming together. In this case, it was the nuns coming together to learn the Vinaya. Okay? So I think this is a very healthy and happy development in Buddhism. Anyway, in writing this book, I had to do a lot of research, not just reading scholarly books and old material, but I really wanted to understand how people practice now and what is the Theravada doctrine that is taught to people when they really seriously learn the teachings. And similarly, what is taught in East Asia in the general Mahayana tradition, and what was astounding for me in this whole process of learning is I saw quite clearly that the teachings were not contradictory. Yeah? And in the Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, we share many of the same scriptures. Yeah. In fact, one time I was visiting a friend of mine who is a Chan monk, and we were going to somebody was offering lunch dana, and we were going to eat together, but I had to wait for him because he was giving a talk. So I was sitting outside listening to his talk, and he was teaching about the 9 stages of sustained attention that you go through to develop shamatha, which is exactly the same teaching we have in the Tibetan tradition. Okay? So it was really nice, hearing that. And then also, I began to see, as I read Pali Sutras, that so many of the points that we study in Tibetan Buddhism and also in general Mahayana, they're rooted in the Pali scriptures because, we had 18 original schools. Yeah, what later became the Theravada school was one of those 18. Okay, there were many more, and so the schools in North India, had also teachings coming from the Buddha, but in their own languages. We don't have many historical records of those because the scriptures were written on palm leaves and other things that disintegrate. But the passages that were common in the Tripitaka, made their way to Tibet, made their way to into the Chinese canon. In the Chinese canon, you have the agamas, and these constitute the 4 main nikayas in the Pali tradition. Okay? So you basically have very similar sutras. There's scholars doing research on the difference between this sutra in this canon and in the other canon, but we'll leave that for the scholars, because the main meaning and the main teaching of the sutras is very much the same. Yeah? And so in the Tibetan tradition, we follow what's called the stages of the path. And, it starts out with precious human life, contemplating death and rebirth, learning about karma, the Four Truths, Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the three higher trainings. All of these teachings are common in the Pali Canon, Chinese canon, and Tibetan canon. Yeah? So it's, the subtitle to the talk, yes, but what is the path? Yeah? So if all the traditions have the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, they all talk about the importance of realizing no self. Okay? Yeah. They talk about the different stages on the path. They may have different names for these and different delineations, but they all talk about generating shamatha and vipassana. Then wouldn't you say that most of the teachings are the same? And what is the path? That's the path. Okay? We want to eliminate the first two truths. Okay? True dukkha, true origins. We want to actualize the last two truths, true cessations and true paths. What is the true path that we practice? It's the three higher trainings in ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. If you just subdivide those three higher trainings, what do you have? The Noble Eightfold Path. Okay? Then in Tibetan Buddhism, we talk about bodhicitta, okay, the aspiration for full awakening to benefit all beings. Yeah, that the teachings on bodhicitta are very much rooted in the four immeasurables, the four Brahma Viharas, okay, that are practiced in the general Mahayana, that are practiced in the Pali tradition. Everybody across the board meditates on that. And the bodhicitta is just you're upping the ante a little bit of the four Brahma Viharas. Okay? All the traditions have the pratimoksha precepts. Those are the 5 lay precepts, the precepts for monastics. Yeah, all of them have that. All of them have the Abhidharma. Sometimes the Abhidharma texts are different. Yeah, and there's a whole discussion even within any given tradition about where the Abhidharma came from to start with. Okay, no one tradition has a unified position on that. But we see, the same themes coming again and again and again. Okay? And so I think, it's important to be aware of that. And, we do our practice. Okay? So, I'm wondering if I should read you something from the book. The cover's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, I think they did a beautiful job on the cover. Okay, what shall I read you? Okay. Why don't you read something about the four immeasurables? Yeah, I like those teachings. Or I could read you something about dependent origination. I like those teachings also. And, and dependent origination is taught in all the traditions as well. Okay. Oh, I just opened the book. okay, randomly to a page. Why don't I read you what's here? Okay, what's here on this page is a poem that His Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote called The Joy of Monastic Discipline. Okay, so I'm not trying to pressure any of you. Okay, but we have our hair clippers and razors ready. Okay, but there's no pressure. Yeah. But it is important to have the Sangha community in order to preserve the Dharma. Yeah. So for the flourishing of the Dharma in Singapore, we need some Singapore monastics. But there's no pressure. Okay, so here's what His Holiness wrote. He wrote it in 1973, quite a while ago. So he said, "We fortunate ones who follow our supreme teacher, the impeccable one. It is becoming for us to engage with pure faith in uncompromised ethical conduct. Externally pure, internally pure, beneficial and joyful, both here and beyond," meaning in the future lives. "Medicine for both self and others. Marvelous. We have met the Buddha's way. Though difficult, we have encountered it this once. Those who seize it are even fewer. With firm determination in our hearts, observe pure conduct by all means possible. Beyond doubt, this discipline subdues the extremely coarse afflictions, even the dukkha natural to householders' lives. What need to mention that this discipline eases that too?" Okay, so the 5 lay precepts. Yeah. The supreme mind of bodhicitta, the lifeline of the bodhisattva path. Concentrations such as the union of serenity and insight, shamatha and vipassana, and so forth. What escapes being produced by this discipline? The wondrous and marvelous, profound path of Tantra, the method to realize no self with the subtlest level of mind, that too is founded on this discipline. The state of a Buddha, the inseparable union of compassion and emptiness, emaho, the swiftest path leading to it, that too relies on this discipline for its cause. Therefore, O intelligent friends, do not disparage or treat as trivial the pratimoksha ethical discipline, which originates in the Sravaka's scriptures. Know that the discipline is praised as the basis and root of the doctrine. Strive to follow it well, supported by study and analysis, with mindfulness, introspective awareness, and conscientiousness. Guard well with utmost striving, with personal integrity and due respect. Do not give in to indifference and indolence, lest you should squander the very root of steadfast well-being. Yeah. Beautiful, huh? Okay. So, okay, how about if we do something on compassion? Okay. So here's a little bit on compassion in the book. And so often what we did is we'll talk about one idea, for example, compassion. We may talk about it from the viewpoint of one tradition and then from the viewpoint of another tradition. or sometimes we combine the teachings together, yeah, because they're so similar that all of us must practice that way. Similar to the meditation on love, the cultivation of compassion begins with contemplating the disadvantages of lacking compassion and the benefits of having it. Okay, lots of disadvantages for lacking compassion. Yeah. What's the mental state that is the biggest hindrance to having compassion? What's the biggest hindrance? Yeah. It's self-centeredness, and together with anger. Yeah. If we have anger in our mind, we can't have love or compassion in our mind at the same time. Yeah. If we are very self-centered and just work for our own benefit, there's no way we can have love and compassion that cares about the happiness and suffering of other living beings. Okay. Do you have hindrances to developing love and compassion in your mind? Hello? Hello? I have hindrances in my mind. I get angry. I fall prey to self-centeredness and selfishness. Okay? So this is something that all of us really need to work on, because if we investigate, so much of our negative karma is created under the influence of anger and self-centeredness, isn't it? Yeah. If we look at the 10 destructive actions, yeah, what motivates all of them? Yeah. If we take the 3 physical ones to abandon, the 3 non-virtues, killing others, stealing, and unwise or unkind sexual behavior. Yeah. Do you do those for the benefit of others, or do you do those with self-centeredness? Self-centeredness. Okay. You don't go out and have an affair with somebody else to benefit all beings. Yeah. Because your behavior is harmful. It's going to harm your own family. Okay. So, when we look at our negative karma, so much of it is because we're just thinking me, my happiness, my suffering, everything that happens to me is the most important in the world. Everybody else comes second, or third, or fourth, or definitely at the end of the line. But my happiness and suffering foremost. Right? And we each think that. And you see, that's the problem. Because you don't realize that it's actually my happiness and suffering, not yours, that is foremost. Okay? Yeah. So we're all thinking that, my happiness and suffering is foremost. We're not realizing that everybody thinks that. So then we just kind of bungle through the world, doing what we want to do in order to get what we want. And in the process, we hurt a lot of people. We destroy the relationships that we care so much about. And we create a lot of negative karma that is only going to ripen in our own misery in future lives. Yeah, so this life we may get what we want, but it doesn't work in the long term to sustain happiness. Okay? Okay. So the first person you cultivate compassion for should be someone in great suffering. You may or may not know that person personally, although compassion will rise more strongly by directly seeing the person. If you do not encounter an appropriate person, you can cultivate compassion for someone creating horrendous destructive karma, even if that person appears happy at the moment. Do this by comparing him to someone given delicious food just before being executed. That's what they do in the U.S. Before they keep you in prison for a long time. Then, if you're on a death row inmate in some states, then they set the execution date. Before they execute you, they keep you in suicide watch because they don't want you to kill yourself. They want you to stay alive long enough so they can execute you. Okay. I wonder if this is the system in Singapore too, because you have the death penalty, don't you? Okay. This is what they do in the States. Okay. So, and then, right before you're executed, you've spent all this time in prison eating the horrible food they serve you for years. The meal right before you're executed, they ask you what you want to eat. And you can order whatever you want. Okay. Now, I wonder how many people really relish that meal. Yeah? And after the meal, then they take you in, they strap you down, they put the needles in, and they send the chemicals going, and they kill you. Barbarian, if you ask me. As Buddhists, we don't agree with killing, do we? Yeah. The Buddha said, don't kill. He didn't say, don't kill, but you can kill, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. He didn't, the precepts don't say yes, but. Yeah. Okay. So I like when it says here, if you don't encounter an appropriately suffering person. Really? Do you not know anybody who's suffering? Yeah. I think all of us are, aren't we? Yeah. If we understand the actual meaning of suffering. And that's why I don't usually translate the term as suffering. I use the Pali Sanskrit word of dukkha, because dukkha doesn't mean the ouch kind of suffering, although it includes that. It means our unsatisfactory situation in samsara. So some people have the ouch kind of suffering. They're in physical and mental pain. So I think it's referring to somebody like that you start out with. But if we really want to develop compassion, it can't be just for people who are in physical and mental pain. Yeah? It has to be for people who think they're happy in samsara. Okay? Do you think you're happy in samsara? Well, you know that the Buddhist answer is no. But I'm asking you, how do you live your life? Do you live your life like you're fed up with samsara and you want liberation? Or do you live your life Like you just want to change a few factors in samsara so that you have more happiness. The latter one, don't we? Yeah. I'll just get rid of my boss. And then I'll be happy. Okay? I'll just control my children and make them do what I want, and then I'll be happy. Yeah. I'll just get a new car, and then I'll be happy. So all of us are trying to basically improve our samsara. Aren't we? I mean, let's be honest. That's how we live our life. We don't really live our life as if we believe that samsara stinks. Yeah. We live our life as if there's actual happiness to be found here. We just need to change some external conditions. I don't need to change. Yeah. The problem is not my ignorance, anger, and attachment. The problem is other people. The problem is society. I'm entitled to more happiness. Everybody should do things my way. And the problem with the world is that the world doesn't understand that. Okay? Is this the way you think inside yourself? Yeah. We don't say it out loud. We're too polite. But how we think inside of ourselves, isn't it like that? You can be honest. We're with friends. Yeah. I mean, let's look at the state of our mind. We have to be honest. Okay? So we are overwhelmed by dukkha, aren't we? We're overwhelmed by ignorance because we can't see that we're in a state of dukkha. We can't see the problems with samsara. Yeah. We don't realize that the origin of samsara is in here. And so we don't really try and change ourselves. We listen to the teachings. We hear the teachings. We recite the teachings. Do we practice them? When you're angry, what do you do when you're angry? Do you sit down and read the Dharma antidotes for how to counteract anger and meditate on them? No. When you're angry, what do? You yell, you scream, or you completely shut down and don't talk to anybody and go somewhere else. Do you think at all about Dharma remedies when you're angry? Seldom, huh? If you have a good friend who comes to you and says, "Oh, it seems like you're really angry. It would be really helpful for you to practice the antidotes to anger that the Buddha taught." What do you say to your friend? Do you say, "Thank you for reminding me"? No, you say, "Shut up. I'm right. This other person did this to me, and they did that to me, and they did the other thing to me, and I'm entitled to be angry because this person, in the world, what they did, Don't tell me to apply antidotes to my anger. My anger sees the situation correctly." Yeah? Huh? Any idea of love and compassion, of practicing patience and fortitude? Far, far away. Isn't it? Yeah. What about when you're really craving something? Yeah? Your mind's full of craving. Yeah, I want this car. I want to date this person. I want this. I want that. Okay? At that point, are you thinking of any of the teachings on the disadvantages of craving? Are you thinking about the first two noble truths? We're daydreaming about the object of our craving. Yeah? We want that car. We know exactly what brand of car, what year, what color. We know what we want inside the car. Mm? Yeah. You want to meet Buddha Boy? Yeah, he's supposed to show up on his white horse and he's a little bit late. Okay. But you know exactly what he looks like. And he's kind and intelligent and wise and rich, but I don't care about that. Yeah. And he's handsome. Yeah. Do you ever think about renunciation of sense objects at that time? No, you're planning your wedding dress. Yeah. You have your whole wedding planned out. The guy is just an accessory who comes. Seriously, I was reading, that many women have their whole wedding planned out. They don't have a boyfriend yet, or a girlfriend. It doesn't matter who they're marrying, but they have the whole wedding planned out. Yeah. The guys have the honeymoon planned out. Yeah. They're not the star of the wedding, but they get what they want at the honeymoon. Okay? So at that time, do we ever think that we're in samsara? Do we ever think that craving and attachment is an affliction? Never. We think, oh, craving is wonderful. It makes me so happy. Okay. So we have some work to do in our practice, don't we? Yeah. It's not enough to recite prayers and to do chanting. We have to study the scriptures, hear teachings, remember what we study and hear, and then meditate on it and have a daily meditation practice where we reflect on whatever teachings we've studied. Yeah. So we actively reflect on the teachings every day. That is what will change our mind, change our perspective. Okay? If we don't think about the Buddhist teachings, then they won't affect our mind. Yeah. We'll be a superficial Buddhist. Yeah. The kind that go, Namo Mitofa, Tofa, Namo Mitofa, Namo Mitofa. Or, yeah. Okay. Or, Namo Tassa Bhagavato. Our mouth becomes Buddhist. But our heart needs to become Buddhist. Yeah, this is what the teachings are about. This is why meditation is important. This is why reflection on the teaching is important, because our hearts need to become Buddhist. Yeah? Okay. So, I think we have a little time for questions, comments, maybe some answers. So, I'll open the floor. We have a mic.
Yeah, I have a mic here that I'll pass around, but somebody came to us before the start of this.
Okay.
So I have two questions here, which actually touched on two of the big topics that Venerable you mentioned earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, what can I do to lessen my infatuation on somebody? Infatuation on someone. So
Oh, you want to
clinging
lessen?
and
You're
longing for
sure you
someone.
want to lessen your infatuation? Are you sure? All the movies, all the songs on the radio are in telling you to increase your infatuation. Aren't they? Aren't they? You know? Okay, so you want to lessen your infatuation. Think about that person when they're in a bad mood. Okay? You know, when you're just getting to know someone and you're dating them, you're doing lots of fun activities together. So doing fun activities, everybody's in a good mood. Yeah. Being married, you're not always doing fun activities. Okay? You're trying to earn enough money to pay the rent. You're trying to cook dinner. You're trying to do the laundry. And then you have some screaming kids to take care of. Okay? So marriage is not about doing fun things together. Once in a while, maybe, but you have to be able to cooperate, you know, to be married. You have to be able to cooperate. If you can't cooperate, your marriage is going to be so unhappy, okay, for everybody involved. So, you know, if you have a lot of infatuation for somebody, they're so good looking, they're so much fun, think of what they're like when they're in a bad mood. Because when you're married to someone, they're not always going to be in a good mood. Are you always going to be in a good mood? No. So why do you expect them to always be in a good mood? Yeah? So we have to learn how to come out of our bad moods if we want the marriage to be happy. And we have to learn how to have patience with our spouses, your spouses. I don't have one. Sure. You have to learn how to generate patience for your spouses if you want to have a happy marriage. Okay? So, you know, remember what they're like when they're in a bad mood, when they don't agree with you. Okay? Also, if part of your infatuation is with their body, think of what their body is actually composed of. Okay? Buddha taught about this in the 4 establishments of mindfulness. You ever done the mindfulness of the body? Yeah? You do that. You meditate on your own body, on the body of the people you're attracted to. Yeah? You mentally dissect their body. There are the eyeballs. There are the teeth. There's a pile of skin. Yeah? Their kidneys. Oh, those kidneys are really good looking. Yeah. Yeah. The stomach, that's not bad either. Yeah. Their intestines. Oh, those intestines. Have you ever seen something more lovely than their intestines? I want to embrace them. Are you sure? Look at what the body really is. Yeah, that helps a lot with sexual infatuation. That's why most lay people don't do that meditation. Because you don't really want to. Yeah. Okay.
The second question is about killing. So yesterday while bathing, there were some ants at the corner of the toilet. The person tried to stay as far away as possible while taking the shower, but they still got drowned. So this person is worried about whether he's going to get bad karma, or should he just say, I tried my best, and just moved on?
Okay. Do you care about the suffering of the ants? Or do you only care about your getting bad karma? Yeah? Okay. Where I live, yeah, we live out in the middle of a forest and meadows. And I find, you know, in my cabin, there's so many bugs. So sometimes I'll go to take a shower, and there's spiders in the shower. Yeah. So I go with my cup and put it over the spider, put a piece of cardboard under it, take the spider outside, let him go. Okay? With big ants, you can do that too. They run pretty fast. They're a little bit harder to catch. Small ants, it's much more difficult. Yeah, because when you try and slide something under them, usually you crush them. Yeah. So, you know, I think if it's some other living being that we can capture and take outside, yeah, do that, then take your shower. Yeah, so try to rescue the beings first.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? Please raise your hands.
Thank you, Venerable. Could you share about your recommendations for devotional practice for Buddhists who might not subscribe to any one particular tradition? So when waiting in the queue at the supermarket, should one be, chanting like, Om Mani Padme Hum or Metta Sutta, or does it even matter? Yeah. But if we're not chanting, then how do we practice? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so practice isn't just chanting. The purpose of chanting is to remind you of the meaning of what those words express. Okay? So in that way, it doesn't matter what exactly you're chanting or reciting in your mind, as long as you're thinking about the meaning of it. Okay? Yeah. I find when waiting in line, okay, a very good practice is to contemplate equanimity, to see that I and all other living beings, we all want happiness together. We all want to be free of suffering equally. And so none of us are really more important than the other. So I find that one very helpful, you know, when you're in a line, when you're in a traffic jam, yeah, when you're in a crowded MRT car, yeah, where there's lots of beings around, to really reflect, you know, they all want happiness and freedom from suffering as intensely as I do. Yeah. And on that basis, I should care about them in the same way that I care about myself.
We have 15 more minutes for questions.
Venerable, I heard about your teaching on loving kindness and compassion. Mm-hmm. I just want to clarify that to eradicate compassion actually helps to eradicate ill will. Am I right to say that?
Eradicate what?
Ill wills like greed, anger, and jealousy.
Yeah. Yeah. Compassion is an antidote to a lot of things. If you have ill will of somebody towards someone, you're wishing them harm. If you have compassion towards somebody, you're wishing them to be free of suffering.
What about loving kindness? How does, you know?
Loving kindness also works. You know, because with loving kindness you want them to have happiness and its causes. Yeah, so both love and compassion can counteract ill will.
Thank you.
Okay. Compassion also works against low self-esteem. So if we have a problem with self-esteem, yeah, not believing in ourselves or criticizing ourselves a lot, His Holiness proposes compassion as an antidote to it. Okay. Why? Because when we have low self-esteem, all of our attention is focused on ourselves. I'm so bad, I'm so terrible, I messed up. Again, I messed up. No wonder nobody loves me. I'm never going to get a job. I'm totally a failure. Okay? So low self-esteem and guilt, they're totally focused on me. Compassion focuses on other living beings. Yeah. When we focus on other living beings, this very unhealthy self-focus disappears. Okay? And so in that way, compassion can help us remedy low self-esteem because we're looking at other people's situation instead of ruminating and exaggerating our own. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one
Venerable
thing.
Chodron, just, sorry. Can I?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to express my gratitude, and I'm sure that most of us listening to you this morning would like to express our gratitude to you for coming to Singapore for the last 43 years, since 1975, teaching us the Dharma, and this morning sharing your personal experiences about the various traditions within Buddhism that you have observed in Singapore and also perhaps in the region as well. Now, I think that when you were describing the monastics coming together in America, coming together once a year to share, is that American Buddhism? Is that a different tradition as well?
No, I don't think we can have American Buddhism.
I think Donald Trump would, your president, would perhaps feel differently.
No, he
but-
just thinks America first. He doesn't
Yes.
think about Buddhism. I wish he did.
But my question to you, Venerable Chodron, is that in what I consider as American Buddhism, because I get it from the internet, a lot of references to teachings from Buddhism, like, for instance, mindfulness, and they are actually treated as something secular. And they don't make reference to the origins of this particular teaching. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Oh, you just put me on my soapbox. I love talking about this.
I was just hoping that I could stimulate you.
You did.
My second
One question at a time. Okay. So, I think I completely agree with you, and I think what we have to do is distinguish between Buddhist mindfulness and secular mindfulness. Yeah, they're very, very different things, and what is being taught as mindfulness now maybe has its root in Buddhism, but it is not Buddhism, okay? Because now in the States, also in Singapore, we have therapists coaches, sports coaches too. I was saying yesterday, I have a friend who's a banker who is teaching mindfulness in his bank on Wall Street. You have all sorts of people talking about mindfulness. And what they're talking about is not Buddhist mindfulness. It's a practice of bare attention, simply watching what is going on in one's mind. Something along that line. A lot of these people have their own version of mindfulness and how they teach it. Okay? And they teach it in a secular context. It benefits other people, and I'm all for benefiting people. But I don't think those people who teach it that way should say that they are Buddhist teachers, and I don't think that they should say they're teaching Buddhism. Okay? It's secular mindfulness. Yeah? Buddhist mindfulness is something different. That's really focusing on the 4 establishments of mindfulness. The aim of Buddhist mindfulness is nirvana. The aim of secular mindfulness is to make your samsara a little bit better. Yeah? It is. Buddhist mindfulness you do not learn through an app. Okay? Secular mindfulness, they have apps, they have meditation music. You know, no Buddhist teacher teaches you to meditate with music on. Okay, it's a total distraction in your meditation, isn't it? You know? So they share the word mindfulness, but they're different. And I think differentiating them is really good, because there are people who are not Buddhist who want to learn mindfulness and will benefit from learning mindfulness. And so let's just make secular mindfulness its own thing, and people can do that and use it for pain control, for psychotherapy, for getting your employees to be calmer, for, you know, all those purposes. Buddhist mindfulness, on the other hand, yeah, is what the Buddha taught in the scriptures, and what we practice for the purpose of penetrating the nature of reality. We want to understand on the conventional and ultimate level what are the natures of the body, the feelings, the mind, and phenomena. Okay, so that practice is for Buddhists. Secular mindfulness, open to everybody. Okay, secular mindfulness people charge money. They do, you know? They charge money. It's a profession. You make an app and you charge. You're a therapist, you're a whatever in somebody's company, you're a sports coach, you teach it, you get paid money. Buddhist mindfulness, yeah, is done out of the goodness of our hearts, you know, and people reciprocate with dana if they want. Okay? So I think it's good to just differentiate them and not get them so confused.
I think it's wonderful, Venerable Chodron, for you to express what my teacher would say, right mindfulness from wrong mindfulness. But I think that my observation from what I have gathered from the media is that a lot of people who are pushing wrong mindfulness are either ex-monastics who have had exposure to His Holiness Dalai Lama, etc., who are involved even right now in Minor Life Institute discussions. So it lends credence to what they do and what they say about what we consider as wrong mindfulness or secular mindfulness.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it wrong mindfulness. That's judgmental. It benefits people. I would call it secular mindfulness.
Right.
And it's not just the scientists in the mind life thing, but it's also the biggest proponents are the people who they call it the Vipassana tradition, and so they're people, Americans, who studied Vipassana meditation many decades ago in Thailand, brought it back to America, and are not and. They didn't want to bring the whole Buddhist worldview with it. So they're teaching Vipassana as a meditation technique, and they're the ones who are really big for pushing the secular mindfulness. Okay? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, Venerable, I think there's one question over this corner.
Okay.
Yeah, this gentleman. Yes.
Venerable, understand that there is a live streaming program going on for the Buddhist Fellowship East on approaching the Buddhist path. So what are the topics that you're going to share, the content? And for those who actually travel often, they will always miss classes. How are we going to follow up?
Oh, okay. So Buddhist Fellowship, it's at this branch, right? No, the other branch. The other branch? Hello? The other one. Yeah. Okay. So so there's a group of people who are following the teachings I give at Shravasti Abbey. I have started, because our teachings are on Friday night, and your class meets Saturday morning. It's at the same time, because you listen live, okay? But I've been teaching Approaching the Buddhist Path, which is volume 1 of the series that I'm working on with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And so volume 1 is an introduction to the Buddhist path, especially for people who, need more, who didn't grow up believing in the triple gem or didn't grow up believing in rebirth, so that they get more background about what actually Buddhism is, something about Buddhist history, what are tools on the path, what does the path look like, so this kind of material. So we started the text just not so long ago, yeah, and so the class meets here, no, the other one, yeah, the other Buddhist Fellowship on Saturday morning at what time? What? 10 o'clock. Okay. And so while we're having the teaching, I'm teaching live at the Abbey, then they're listening here, and then they have a discussion after that. So if anybody wants to join the class, you're very welcome to. You can speak to Jolene or Stella there. Yeah. And then also you asked about missing classes. I know him very well. He travels a lot for work. So that's his yes, but. If you miss class, the teachings are also archived. The Shravasti Abbey has a big YouTube channel. So you can go on the YouTube channel and watch the teachings that you missed when you're traveling. Okay. Yeah, no oversleeping allowed. 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, you can manage.
Okay, I think time's up for us. Maybe let's put ourselves in Anjali and give 3 bows to thank Venerable for the teaching.
Okay, first I'd like us to dedicate the merit.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, so let's rejoice that we were able to share the Dharma today, that hopefully we gathered some things to think about and created some merit. So we learned and we created merit as individuals and as a group. So let's dedicate our merit, send it out into the universe. so that it will ripen with the enlightenment of each and every living being, the existence of all the Buddha's teachings in pure form forever, and the long lives of our teachers, and the good health and long lives of all sincere practitioners. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And I just wanted to add one thing more onto my response to that gentleman's question. His Holiness Dalai Lama has, for many years, has been having meetings with scientists. And I think it's been very, very good. Yeah. Now they have the Mind Life Institute. Many of these scientists are doing research about, what they call contemplative practices. And what it's doing is it's getting the intelligentsia in the country familiar with the idea of Buddhism, and with the idea of meditation and the mind and compassion. And so, it's dialogue with scientists, and we have some of the secular mindfulness coming out of that. But I think it's a very skillful means that His Holiness is doing of getting the intelligentsia in the West interested in the Dharma, because if they can find commonalities between Buddhism and science, then the people more broadly in Western countries will have more faith in the Dharma and will become more interested in it. So I think in the long term, that's his aim. Okay?
Maybe Werner go for
Okay.
Venerable, time for your lunch, and then
Yes.
the rest of us will stay for announcements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can do your
Let's do our 3 bows to the Venerable first.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. After the 3 bows, we can do that, okay? Yeah.
Okay, let's offer 3 bows first. First bow. Second bow. And the third bow.